Hi everybody, thanks for watching. Today I'm going to talk to you about some changes to the immigration rules. We had a statement of changes from the Home Office at the end of September for changes coming in on the 6th of October. So I'm going to spend a couple of minutes now with you talking through 5 changes in those rules that I think are important for employers. And I thought I'd do it by video because they can be quite a dry read. So the first big change I wanted to talk to you about was the skilled worker and T2 sports persons settlement concession. And what do we mean by that? Well, there was a concession during the pandemic to say that individuals applying for visas in those categories could start work whilst the decision on their application was being made. If they'd applied from a date around the end of January to a date in the end of June. So if you'd applied in that period, you could start working earlier. That raised a question of, does that time working count towards your 5 years of residence and qualifying residence for settlement? And the rules are being changed to say, yes, that it does. So that's good news for anyone in those categories. And if you're an employer of them, you might find that there's a sooner date than you thought might have been the case for them to become settled and no longer require sponsorship. Good. Number 2, business visits. And this is a important change for manufacturers and suppliers. So if you are sending people to the UK as business visitors and you're a manufacturer and supplier from outside the UK, it's important. Had lots of post-Brexit attention around this about whether within the visitor rules, it's a permitted activity for the employees of foreign manufacturers and suppliers to do certain things with products or machinery that they've supplied. So we've had a few helpful changes now that are coming in for visits from the 6th of October. We've got clarification around the permitted activity description, including that in addition to being able to install, dismantle, repair or service or advise on items that have been supplied by the manufacturer for an employer, you can train members of the UK's workforce to do that as well. So you could have someone come and visit the UK team and train them on how to work on the equipment. We've also had an extension of the description of what sort of things might have been delivered and being serviced and worked on, advised on, etc. And that now includes machinery, which we kind of thought it did anyway, but it's helpful to have that beyond doubt. And a final helpful one on this point was that as an alternative to being the manufacturer or supplier of the machinery, this is the employer that's sending the individuals to the UK, machinery, equipment, etc., computer or hardware or software. The foreign company sending the individual can now alternatively have a contractual arrangement for after sales care or services, like a warranty arrangement. So as long as that was agreed at the time when the machinery, equipment, etc., was sold or leased to the UK company or organisation as a client, you could rely on that relationship rather than sometimes the more cumbersome one of establishing manufacturer or supplier status. So some important, helpful changes will ease, I think, some of the pressure that providers are feeling about their ability to send people to the UK to work on and support equipment here. Third thing I wanted to talk about, the new international sports person route. We've had traditionally a split between Tier 2 or T2 long-term work visas for sports people and T5 short-term routes for professional sporting workers, and that's going to be replaced by a single international sports person route. Still going to be a dedicated option for being short-term within it, different visa fees, different, slightly easier process. That's for 12 months or less visits, but it will be under one unified heading, and there's going to be new forms, simpler routes and procedures, but still a dual assurance. So you'll still have to have club sponsorship and the sports governing body endorsement, but some simplification there of the rules if you're in the sports sector. Number 4, Tier 5 temporary workers are rebranding. We had the Tier or T5 language, and that's being dropped. It's quite clunky language, in place and replaced by a new international sports person route, and that we just touched on, and a temporary creative worker visa. So we're going to have a temporary work banner rather than all these different T5 creative, T5 youth mobility, T5 sports. It's going to be more simplified. Again, new application forms being released on that, and the references to the old T5 system will be removed, and we'll just be talking about temporary work. I think that's going to be a really growth area for UK employers who are feeling the pinch and a lack of available labour for roles that aren't necessarily long-term. Maybe they're only for a placement of around up to a year, where you're going to be looking at those temporary work schemes, and this should hopefully make it slightly easier. One of those schemes, the Youth Mobility Scheme, falling under that banner of temporary work, is also getting a rebrand, and this is my point number 5. So the final point for today, rebrand of that scheme as well, Youth Mobility, plus Iceland and India having some changes. So the tongue twister of T5 brackets temporary worker Youth Mobility Scheme is being dropped, as a relief. It's now Youth Mobility Scheme route. That's what it's going to be. Could be significant importance. This is one of those temporary work routes that I think employers might really be relying on with labour shortages. Iceland's being added to the list as a country with deemed sponsorship status, which means they'll get 1,000 places initially. India is being added to the list of countries with an invitation to apply arrangement. So that means individuals in that country can apply to a ballot effectively to try and get some of the 3,000 places that are allocated to India. So some changes there, but something to keep an eye on, because you may find that Youth Mobility Scheme visas are coming up a lot more. You can look to encourage applications for those to get people into the UK that you need desperately for work. Final point is Australia still remains the big player in the Youth Mobility Scheme arrangements. That's been fueled a bit by the new trade agreement with Australia, the enhanced cooperations through that, but they've got deemed sponsorship status and 30,000 places. So you can see that India only has a fraction, 10% of the spaces Australia has. So it's still very much Australian weighted scheme. So there's 5 things for you for the statement of changes. They come in from the 6th of October. We'll be doing updates as we go forward with other statement of changes as they come through. I hope that's been helpful. Do make sure you sign up to our updates and blogs and newsletters to keep up to date with all the changes in immigration law going forward.